Today, we're going to make an automated income and expense tracker that looks just like this. Let's get started with a fresh sheet. This blank sheet is going to have three tabs, and the first we're going to name the Accounts tab because this will have a list of all the different categories for revenue and expenses that we want to add. All we need to do is go into column A. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and we will have all our different accounts. For now, I'm just going to add a few work revenue, so that's your salary, your hourly pay, dividend revenue from investing, and then a catch-all category of other revenue. And then for expenses, we can add a few basic ones: gas expense, groceries expense, we'll do clothing, utilities, and then a catch-all other expense as well. And for formatting, we're just gonna put a border around everything, make the accounts bold. We're gonna color that gray as the header. And then to differentiate between revenue and expenses, as you'll see later on, we're going to make all revenues green and all expenses orange. Later on, if you need to add different accounts, then you can simply add a column and add an expense account here, for example, but we're going to leave it like this and then add another sheet. And this sheet is going to be our journal tab. So we'll rename this the journal. And this is basically where all of our data entry is going to go for when we have money come in or we spend and money goes out. So to start, our header is going to say income and expenses 2025. You can call it whatever you want. And then we'll have four columns: the date, the account, which goes back to the accounts tab, the amount in dollars, and then any notes we might have for the given transaction. I'm also quickly going to change the width of all these columns because they need to be a little bit bigger. You can kind of drag as you please, but I looked into my previous template and I think these amounts that I'm typing in currently are about right, but you could do whatever works for you. We'll make the notes column a little wider. And then as an example transaction in this third row, we are just going to write the date January 1st, 2025. The account will do gas expense, the amount $50, and for notes we'll just say gas for trip. For a little bit of formatting, we're going to take the first column and center it, and then we are going to also format it as a date. So we'll click into more number formats, date, and I like to keep it how we have it here. Yep, we'll just keep it like that and hit OK. Then for the amount in column C, we'll click on the header and we will click this little drop down, more accounting formats, and we are going to format as accounting with 2 decimal places and a $sign, hit OK. And then for the accounts tab, we don't want to have to type in the account every time. We want to be able to pick from our accounts in a drop down menu. That way we're not going to have any issues with the summing later on. So if we click in this cell B3, the gas expense, we want to make this a drop down list. So to do that, we will go to this data heading here, and then we will find in data tools to the right, data validation. We can click on this, click on data validation. And then in this little dialog box here, on this drop down menu, we will allow a list, and the source, we're going to go back to the accounts tab and highlight everything from work revenue to other expenses, and we can hit enter and then OK. So now we have a drop down menu with all of our accounts. And then if you end up going back and adding an account, so let's say we want another expense. Let's call it telephone expense. I can't really think of a better example. Hit enter. We go back to our journal. And then if we click on the drop down menu again, you'll see that telephone expense is an option here because we added it. And now that we have this set up, let's do some formatting. So I'm going to highlight all of these headers, and then go back to home. and format them to the left, center them to the left. Then with our general header on the top, I want to merge and center this. And then I'm going to highlight everything we have and put borders around it. After I do this, I'm going to bold these first two rows with the headers, and then I'm going to add some color as well. So these subheaders will make a light blue, and then the main header we can make a darker blue. And because the black on blue looks a little weird, we'll make the font white. And now that we have this, we can add some more rows. So let's insert, and you'll see we're going to have to change the formatting in a second so that it copies as white instead of as blue. But let's add those rows for now. And what we can do is highlight this row 18, select Format Painter, then highlight all the range above to copy the format over. So now the format should be good. However, the drop-down menu is not in all the other accounts yet. So what we can do is we can highlight this range. We can go back to data, data validation. We can hit yes and then OK. And this will extend our data validation to all the rows we have selected. And we can hit OK. So now all these rows from B3 to B18 should have the drop-down menu. And there's one more thing I want to do on this sheet before we move on to the third and final tab. And what we're going to do is highlight from B3 down to B18, go back to the Home tab, and then click Conditional Formatting and select a new rule. We are going to format only cells that contain specific text containing the word expense. So if any cell in this range contains the word expense, we'll click on Format. The fill color will be the orange that we selected on the Accounts tab. We can hit OK. And then we also want to do the same rule for revenues. So we will click Conditional Formatting, New Rule, and then format only cells that contain specific text containing revenue. We'll do capital R. Format, and the green color for revenue. We can hit OK, OK. And then let's do a test where on January 2nd we had work revenue of $500, and that was our salary. And then one more important thing for later, let's hide this row 3. So if you select row 3 to highlight everything here and then right click, you can hide the row. This way, when you go to insert cells later, they'll copy the correct formatting instead of the formatting from row 2. Now we can add the final tab, which will be our net income tab, and then this is where we're going to sum all of the transactions from the journal. And this sheet is going to split up everything by month, so we're going to start in cell B6 so we have room for everything later on. And let's type in January, move down, February, and then we should be able to click and drag all the way down to December. We can make this a little bit wider. And then for our headers, starting in C5, we'll do data, data validation, and create another drop-down menu. So allow list, and the source, like before, will be our accounts. And we can hit enter and OK. So for example, our first header, we can select gas expense, but we're going to need to change the formatting a little bit. So let's take cells C3 to C5, and if we go back to home, I'm going to merge and center and wrap the text. And then I'm also going to center or middle align as well. And then again, copy this over for the next 6. But we don't want gas expense every time, so let's change it to groceries on the second one. Telephone, that doesn't look good. Clothing, utilities, and other. We can make this a little bit wider to fit. And then for some formatting, we're going to take these 4 cells here, merge and center, and just write 2025. We'll also middle align. And real quick, we're going to merge and center up here as well and just say expenses, hit enter. Then similarly, as we did for 2025, we can merge and center and middle align over here, and this will be our total expenses column. We'll also need to wrap the text. Finally, we will add a total under the last month of December, and let's format this to make it look a little bit better. We're going to highlight the entire thing and give it borders. We can bold all of these headers, and then we can also bold the total down here. Let's resize all these columns so that they fit better. We can highlight everything, and we can change the column width to 10 and hit enter. And then I'll probably mess with the font sizing. I mean, all of this you can kind of do whatever you want to do to make it look good. I'm just trying to keep it consistent, so we'll make this gray. We'll make all of our headers orange, and then we can take our totals and make them a light orange. And let's also center everything as well. And before we move on to the revenues chart, let's just create these sums for total expenses, where we can have a sum, summing everything in January, enter. We can drag this all the way down, and then the totals for each expense for the year. We can drag this across, and then we can highlight all the numbers here, and we can format them as accounting and hit OK. Now, to copy this over to a revenue chart, let's first change the formatting of these rows, make them size 4 to give us more space. And then let's copy over 3 rows because we only had 3 revenue categories. We can copy them over, and then we can copy the total over as well. And then what we can do with this cell here, we can merge and then copy the formatting from this expenses by using the format painter. And then we'll call it revenues. Change all the colors to the green we wanted to use. Change these colors to the slightly lighter green that we were using. And then change to work revenue, dividend revenue, and other revenue, and name this total revenues. Enter. Make this a little bit wider as well, highlighting all these rows, making sure that they are size 10 like the other ones were, and hit OK. And then finally, if we first change the column width of column O to 4, we're going to make a little net income chart off to the side here. So for this, I'm going to copy all the months and total over to here, hit enter, change these columns width to 10, hit OK. Then I'm going to take all of these cells here, merge and center, and wrap the text and type in net income and enter. We can also middle align, make this a little bit bigger, then add borders all the way around, and add the blue colors that we used back on the last sheet, which I believe is this one, white text, and then for the totals, the lighter blue. And the net income is going to be a very simple formula. So the January net income, we'll type in equals, and it's going to be total revenues in N6 minus total expenses in I6. Hit enter, and then we can drag this all the way down. And now we're almost done. The final thing we need to do before we add our formulas that take from the journal tab to the net income tab is we need a little month chart off to the side, which you'll see in a minute why it's important. But all I'm going to do is in columns S, T, and U, type in month, start date, and end date. And then I'm also going to make the text a little smaller because this isn't something we need in the forefront. And then in the month column, we're going to add in our months, January, February, and like we did before, we'll drag this all the way down to December. And then the start date of the month is January 1st. The end date is January 31st. And we'll change the formatting again real quick, highlighting those or highlighting these total columns in general. The more number formats, date, and this first one here, hit OK. and then we can add 2, 1, and 2, 28. And then if we drag these down, I'm assuming it will know. Yep, okay. So that's the start date and end date for every month. Quickly center these. And now we're ready for the final part. If any of this is too confusing, don't worry. I'll leave a template in the link or description as well. So for our formula in cell C6, we're going to type in equals sum ifs, open our parentheses, and for our sum range, we're going to go to the Journal tab, highlight everything from cell C2 to C18, make sure it starts at C2, add a comma. Our criteria range will be from the accounts, so B2 to B18, comma, and then just type in C3 and hit enter. C3 is this gas expense tab here. So what this formula is doing right now is it's summing the amounts if the accounts equal what is in this cell here, gas expense. So all of our gas expense of $50 is being summed. However, this is going to pose an issue for later because it is not separating by month yet. To add the final part, which breaks it down for date, we're going to click back into the formula, comma, go into the Journal tab again, and then highlight for this criteria A2 down to A18 to cover the date. Then we'll add another comma, and then we can type in quotations greater than or equal to quotations and symbol, and then go back to net income and click on our first start date of January 1st. So this means it's going to sum everything with a start date greater than January 1st, but we also want it to be less than or equal to January 31st so that it's only the month of January included. So to do that, we add one more comma, go into the Journal tab one more time, highlight from A2 to A18, and then we're going to do quotations less than or equal to quotations and then go back into the net income tab and select our end date of January 31st. Then we can hit enter, and it looks like I missed something. I think I missed a comma after A18. We can hit enter. And if you want to read this function in its total, it's summing from the amounts on the Journal tab if the accounts tab equals this gas expense, as well as incorporating the start and end dates between January 1st and January 31st. So let's get out of this. And before we copy this over to all the other cells, we have to add some references by throwing some dollar signs in this formula. So we're going to add dollar signs before C2, before C18, before B2, before B18, and where we have C3, we're going to add one before the number 3. And then to wrap up, we're going to throw a dollar sign before A2, before A18, before T6, and then one more time before A2, before A18, and before U6. Should work now if we hit enter, and then if we highlight this all the way over and all the way down, and then if we copy this over to revenues as well, you'll see that we have the $500 January work revenue. But let's just do a quick test to make sure that that fully worked. So what's today? July 12th. So we'll type in 7/12, and let's add a clothing expense of $35 and say we bought a shirt. Now we should see July has a clothing expense of $35 on the net income tab, and we have it right there. But why is it showing in revenues? Okay, real quick. Hopefully you guys did this when you were making it, but let's change the total revenues to equal sum just these 3 columns, close our parentheses, and drag this all the way down. Okay, so now our clothing expense of $35 gives us a net income in July of -$35 because that's all we've listed. And then at the end of all this, you have your total net income for the year. And now you have an automated sheet to track your income and expenses, All you have to do at this point is add things to the journal and occasionally, if needed, add different accounts. And then you'll be able to track your net income. Let me know if you have any questions when making this. I'm leaving a link to the template because this is a pretty tough spreadsheet to make. So hopefully the template will work well for you. And don't forget to leave a like. I'll see you in the next one.